a proud member of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
Welcome back to another episode of The Film Appraisers, the podcast that evaluates your favorite films. Evaluate, you say? You mean evaluate? No, I don't mean evaluate. I mean evaluate because we appraise. What we mean is that each episode we will discuss a film and we'll appraise it in each of the following categories: narrative, music, technique, uniqueness, and longevity. Each category can get a maximum of $20,000 from their appraiser, for a possible $100,000 for the perfect film, and then we see where it stands next to the classics, next to other films brought to us by guests or listeners. And then I say all that, and we're not going to do that this time. So nope. This is your Thanksgiving special. And for this episode, we are going to discuss a film that I think is perfect for this time of year. It's the John Hughes Thanksgiving comedy from 1987. It's starring Steve Martin and John Candy. It's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. My name is Josh, and this is episode 27, the very cleverly titled Jet, Locomotive, and Car. Thought of that all by myself. And so there he is with me today, taking time off of work, where he's the director of sales for the Whiskey Cork division of America Bottle and Packaging Company. That's Mr. Joe Kane.
So I am channeling my inner Albert today, drinking the largest decaf coffee I could find, and we're coming in pretty hot on this one. So I only finished watching and doing the notes maybe 25 minutes ago. And when I was Googling this film to pull up IMDb, local showtimes at multiple theaters came up for this film, and I was not ready for that.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that too. That's pretty cool. I mean, considering you can actually go to the cinema right now, but I thought that was pretty cool to see some actual showtimes pop up. Well, Joe, have you talked with Todd today? He's our elusive third host. Will he be joining in on the festivities?
He said he'd be here. He said he'd be a little bit late, but he should be here by 10.
All right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hey, before we start our discussion of this particular film, let's clarify something with our listeners. Why are you listening to the Thanksgiving special instead of what we had planned to do, which was the films that inspired Ready Player One? Small scheduling snafu, no big deal. We still plan to get that one in the can for you. It might be the next episode. It might be this episode after this. Don't know for sure yet, but I promise we'll get that one out. Not a big deal. We'll get to that really quickly for you.
Yeah, like we said, we're rolling into the holiday season, and scheduling is a disaster, and scheduling was a disaster. So we'll get that straightened out.
And scheduling was a disaster. So let's talk Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This is a Thanksgiving staple for a lot of people. For me personally, it's not one that was in. It's not like the Christmas films we talked about last year in our Christmas episode, where there's always like a certain one that you always watch. I know which one you always watch. We talked about the ones that I always watch. But this for Thanksgiving, this for me, it's not like a staple. Like I don't watch this every single year, but I do recall seeing this a lot over the course of my childhood and, you know, as an adult, but from time to time. What about you, Joe? What's your history like with this film?
I mean, my entire history with this film is pretty much just seeing it on broadcast TV every year as a kid, as like the holiday season started to roll in, like maybe like an unofficial opening to the holiday season kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was this and, the Ed O'Neill Dutch. It was this and Dutch. Were always the Thanksgiving films that kind of rolled in a little bit before the Christmas movies and set up like, hey, the holidays are here. Buckle up.
Right.
And I told you, I don't think I've seen this not on TV before because there was a lot of stuff in this that definitely wasn't on broadcast TV.
It showed you why it got an R rating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny you said Dutch, because that you're right. That's another Thanksgiving film, and it's also written by John Hughes. He didn't direct and write it, but he did write it, which is kind of interesting that he has two. I wouldn't say Dutch is a staple, but it's definitely one of the very few Thanksgiving films we have. There's just not many out there.
No, and I do think it's like one of the few that I think this and that and Dutch still end up on TV a lot every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that like loves this or loves Dutch.
Right.
I do think this one is spoken of much more highly,
Mhm.
but I do think those are like, I think, which is probably because there's a lack of Thanksgiving movies, so
Mhm.
they kind of get to stick around a little bit longer. But I wouldn't say that's the only reason for either one of them, though. They are both solid films. I think this is definitely a better one, though.
Yeah.
Although it's been probably 20 years since I've actually watched Dutch, so who knows?
Right. Yeah. That one might not be as good as we think it is. I can think of one other Thanksgiving film. It's one of my favorite films of all time, but I'm not going to spoil it because I might talk about that either in a staff selection next year or maybe for the next Thanksgiving special. Who knows? But let's talk about this one and talk about just, we're not going to break it down and appraise it. I really just want to be able to talk about like what it is about this film. What are some of those favorite things in this film that make it, I wouldn't say special, but it's one of those that you will definitely stop and watch if maybe the kids aren't around or if you just got some time on your hands. This is one that people tend to just stop and watch, but there's a reason for that. There's a lot of really good things in this film. Are there any things just right off the top that when you did a rewatch really stand out for you as what you liked out of it?
Well, I think fundamentally, like before I get into like individual gags that I thought were really funny, I think fundamentally on a larger scale, like a larger picture, the performances in this are pretty solid. I mean, there's a couple of like real sentimental moments on John Candy's part that are pretty good, and the film kind of has heart. It's not just an R-rated slapsticky comedy. There's like, I mean, to be honest, I watched this an embarrassing number of times as a child without realizing how sad this film actually is.
Well, it happens really fast at the end. I was watching the timer and we got down to like 13 minutes left in the film whenever the revelation really comes, and that's 13 minutes with credits to go,
Right, yeah, it comes in hot, but
just like us.
They do drop plenty of just like us. They do drop plenty of hints, and there is like I wouldn't say right in the beginning. It's probably maybe a half an hour in the hotel scene where John Candy rips Steve Martin apart for being a jerk.
Yeah.
That's a really good scene. It's really effective, and it made me feel bad for thinking stuff that Steve Martin had said was funny prior to that. Right. I was like, ooh, maybe I'm a bad person.
I think that's a standout moment for John Candy's acting. To me, this is the first film that he got to do where he actually got to show an emotional range of acting. He'd always had some level, mostly comedy, but he had some level of emotional aspects to his characters, but nothing like this. And what you're talking about in that hotel room scene, that is a standout moment. And Neil goes off on him, and you can see his emotion in his face. It goes like 3 or 4 different levels. It goes from normal while he's listening to it, and then he gets a little bit angry, and then you can tell he gets really sad, and then he builds back up some confidence, and he gets back to, he goes back at Neil to be really honest with him. The range through that 1 minute that John Candy does is phenomenal. I really love that acting.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know that I can think of. So I don't know. This might be a me thing. I don't know if this is like a normal child thing, or maybe you can chime in on this because we were children at slightly different times. I was obsessed with John Candy movies when I was little. I loved Uncle Buck and like all those movies, like all those like silly, The Great Outdoors. Like I just could not get enough John Candy when I was younger. I think he was really funny.
Did you watch Camp Candy, that cartoon on Saturday mornings? They did a cartoon with John Candy where he ran this like summer camp.
I am confident I did not, and I don't think
that's like an Albert. Is that an Albert deep cut? Did I pull that out?
Yeah, I also think, yeah. So that was off air by the time I was 5. I was only 5 when that stopped happening. So I probably, even if I had caught some of it, would have no recollection.
But I think it's easy to like John Candy. Like you never really run across those people that say, "Man, I can't stand him." And there might be 1 or 2, but he's just so lovable and likable.
Yeah, exactly. Even in this, when he's super annoying, he's still lovable.
Yeah.
It's like I honestly watching this made me want to watch Uncle Buck and the Great Outdoors a lot. Those are both such good films. I mean, they're hilarious. I haven't watched them in a long time, and maybe watching them again would pull some of the sheen off of them. But in my memory, they are just straight hilarious. So, but he plays that like kind of like oblivious, doofy dude. But he does it so well. But yeah, like where I was going with this is like all those films, even that what was that
Not the detective one he did, right?
No, the one where he is just like, I'm pretty sure it's him. Dan Aykroyd plays a judge. Nothing But Trouble, maybe?
Oh, Nothing But Trouble. Ooh, that is rough.
Oh, man, that movie is a problem.
Like the one and only Dan Aykroyd directed film, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah. He's like a prison guard or something in that, right?
He made
or a cop.
Odds are he is. He's got to be because it's the same group of folks that always are in those films together that they saw in the 80s. And I'm pretty sure he is because Chevy Chase is in that too. And yeah, I've seen that film a lot. I watched that a lot as a kid, and I can't tell you why because it's awful. I haven't watched it in years, but I can tell you it's awful.
There's something about that group. That whole like SNL era, group,
Second City,
that
SNL group,
Even when even the ones that don't land and I don't find it funny, they're bad scripts or whatever. They're for some reason like there's like some kind of charisma about the way they all operate together that makes them very watchable.
Right,
but even in all those ones that I watched a lot as a kid and enjoyed quite a bit. I don't ever remember seeing like real acting out of John Candy like this.
Yeah.
Like maybe a little bit here and there. I think maybe in a couple of those films you get to see him. I think Uncle Buck, he has a couple of like realization moments about his relationship with the kids or whatever. But I don't think they even come close to this level of performance. This is really solid. He has a couple of really solid moments in this.
And he has some of the best lines in the film. Like they gave him like the premiere still made me laugh. I watched this, like I said, we came in hot here. So I was watching this very early this morning. I was rolling. Like he gets lines like, we'll have more luck playing pickup sticks with our butt cheeks than we will get a flat out of here by day. Just little things like that are just hilarious.
Really good ones. Yeah. You know what? Like, there are some slapsticky moments in this too. Both him and Steve Martin got. And I think my favorite one is the look Steve Martin makes on his face when he says, "Those aren't pillows."
Yes.
The look on his face is before he even says it is immediately hilarious.
To me, that whole scene, which is the classic scene from this film, one everybody remembers, it's when John Candy's like very gently kissing on his ear. It's just like he just nuzzles him with his nose. It's so funny. It is a really good scene. Still to this day, I think it's good, even though you know what's coming. And that whole, Bears did great this week. That whole part's not even as good as that whole setup and the slow pan to it and everything. That is great. They do a lot of other little things, like some things that little touches that I didn't necessarily. One of them I didn't miss. I'd always seen this, but it's a very minor touch to the film, and they throw it in there really well. One of them that I'm thinking of is like when you see Kevin Bacon in this. I forgot Kevin Bacon was in this.
Yeah.
And there's actually a scene we see where Neil and Dell are sleeping in the same bed. We cut to Neil's wife, who's up watching a film, but you don't see what movie she's watching on TV. It's the fight scene from Kevin Bacon's other John Hughes film, She's Having a Baby, which hadn't even come out yet. It still hadn't been out. It hadn't been released yet. It was still in the works. So that little touches like that, like when Neil gets in the cab, I noticed it this time. Didn't notice it before, but I noticed it this time when Neil tries to get the cab and John Candy's character Dell takes off. He looks down at the puddle and there's a shower ring in the puddle, like he just kind of ran off in a hurry. Just little things like that are nice little touches that just make all this flow really well.
Yeah, there's a a lot of really familiar faces through here too. Like you mentioned, Kevin Bacon's like very short appearance.
Yeah.
There's
Ferris Bueller's dad.
Ferris, right? Gonna say Lyman Ward. I was trying to find his name real quick.
Yeah.
Lyman Ward, Ferris Bueller's dad, is in there, and
Edie McClurg, the Grace from Ferris Bueller, who is I love her.
Yes, and right now I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, and all I can think of is him being the like the ICE immigration cop in Coneheads.
Michael McLean.
Yes, Michael McLean. Thank you. I could not. I had it in my mouth when I started talking, and it totally disappeared. Yeah, he's in here. He plays the cop that pulls him over for their car being a total disaster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of familiar faces kind of pop up, but that's kind of typical of all of these films. You see a lot of the same faces pop up, even if they're not big parts.
I think I said McLean, Michael McKean. I think he can steal the scene. So when I saw him pop up, I forgot he was in it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be really good. But they didn't give him a whole lot to do, which is probably good because he would probably steal it.
I love how dry he plays it.
Yeah, that's right. Because you think he's going to get out. Like, Dale's a good salesman. They've set that up. He's a great salesman. And so he's making his pitch, and you're like, Dale's going to get out of it. And then they just bluntly cut to the car being towed into the impound, and you're like, nope, didn't work.
I laughed. Speaking of being a good salesman, I laughed probably harder than I should have at them setting him up as a good salesman for this whole film. And then when they show him in action, he's just like, these are like...
he's just lying.
He's just lying, but he's also just attaching a celebrity name to a shower ring and saying it's jewelry. He's just like, I can't really... These are Barbara Walter earrings. Like, based on what? Like...
Yeah, and it's pretty funny seeing these girls, and there may have been a guy in there also, put these shower rings in their ear. The gag probably would have been even funnier if he'd have just shown him do it one time, and you see some goofball walking off with it. But yeah, you're right. He's just lying. Yeah, I was starting to think about the scene with Michael McKean. It might be, he might have had more to do in this film. I had read that the first cut of this thing was like 3 hours plus, which is not uncommon for a first cut. You film everything you've got in the script, and then you just see what you've got. And people always freak out and say, oh, this thing could have been 5 hours. No, it's just the way it is. That's how movies work. But they even cut it down, and they were at 2 hours. And I think they showed a first draft to focus groups and things like that. They decided, no, we got to cut this down even further. Or the studios probably told them, cut it down even further to an hour 33. So there may be a ton of some of these other characters that we just don't even know about. There has to be, I guess.
And honestly, watching this, it flew by, and it would not. It would not. I don't think this film would have a problem at 2 hours, but also, we don't know what got cut, so who knows? But
yeah,
the other thing too is like just from a audience digestion standpoint, 2 hour films were like long films. In the 80s, early 90s. We didn't start doing like regular 2.5, 3 hour films until actually pretty recently. So, coming in at 2 hours is like, you're really asking for a lot of attention. And what was this, 87?
Yeah, 87. Yeah.
87, yeah. It's like, that's a long, 2 hours is a lot for 87.
Especially a comedy.
Yes.
It's got, because right, you do a comedy, it needs to get funnier and funnier and funnier and funnier as you go on. Man, the longer you go on, that's hard to do.
Right. I think audience expectations are way different. I think if you wanted 2 hours and 87, you really had to earn it.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like every movie is 2 hours. It's so rare to see a film come in at like 87 minutes now.
Yeah. How happy do you get when we appraise films and you look and it's like an hour and 35 minutes or something like that?
There are two peak happiness levels. Okay. When I get here or see we get to do a film I really like, and I have an excuse to watch it 2 or 3 times, I'm pretty happy about that. When I see the film is short and I'm like, oh man, I could squeeze this in like whenever, that's also a really happy moment. The exact inverse is Titanic, where I don't want to watch it and it's a day long.
Seriously. I mean, 3.5 hours.
You know what I love is that, here's some live feedback for the audience. I thought we were a little hard on that film, and everybody who gave us feedback was like, you guys were way too nice to that movie.
I completely agree with you there. I was shocked at how many people agreed with that. Well, one person wasn't, but they'll remain unnamed. But there was a lot of people who agree with us. Yeah, or it was like you said, even said we didn't do it enough.
Yeah, I was proud of our audience.
Yeah, I was too. Made me happy that they're our audience.
You know a bit that really got me, like right in the beginning, right towards the beginning, when Candy's clearing his sinuses in that hotel in the beginning. Yes. I was like so grossed out at first.
Yeah.
I was super grossed out at first. And then as it just kept going on, I just started laughing. I was laughing so hard by the time Steve Martin blew up about it. I was like, it's the worst noise.
There's a lot of, I won't say gross, like make you sick or gag or anything, but there's a lot of stuff where you're just like, gross, man. Like what you said exactly with the snorting and coughing and stuff. Or like when Steve Martin goes into the bathroom and he's got the socks in the sink, or he wipes his face with his underwear, or when he's walking across the bathroom floor and it's all wet and it's like, just all of that is just makes your stomach turn with Del, really.
Yeah, that dude's hygiene and manners leave a lot to be desired.
Did you notice what they did with him throughout the film, where anytime you saw Del in a situation or when he was stationary, just suddenly like bags of junk food would start accumulating around him more and more and more, and like empty cans of Coke and cigarette butts and bags of Doritos. Yeah. But by the end of the film, when they finally are friends and they're in that last hotel room drinking out of those little bottles of whiskey and stuff
everywhere,
Dorito bags both of them on both at the chair where Del was, at the bed where Steve Martin's character Neil was. They're both the same. I thought that was pretty cool to tie those together, because it's not something you see it, you don't think about it, and it's probably a more subliminal thing by the time you get to the end of the film, that they're kind of, as one now that they're friends.
You know what's funny about that scene, in a totally me way? I've seen plenty of 80s movies. I've watched, this is not the first time I've ever seen this, but for some reason, that old Doritos bag that I've never actually seen in person, it kept catching my attention. Weirdly.
It's so really triangular shaped and very hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of think about it in the same way, like when I see that old Taco Bell, but maybe I'm actually just thinking of like the Taco Bell Doritos. Didn't they do Taco Bell Doritos a long time ago? They had that old Taco Bell logo on there. That might be a conversation for the basement.
Yeah, you are.
I'm heading to the wrong direction.
I was really trying. I was trying to pull that recall, but yikes. Anyway, so. Back to the movie.
So how about them Bears?
How about them Bears? This movie had so many like super 80s tropey moments in it too. Mm-hmm. It's one of those films, like some films you watch from the 80s, you're like, oh, this could be like a 70s or early 90s kind of thing. This one where it comes in. It's got like all the like synthy piano cues.
I was just gonna say the music doesn't help make you think otherwise.
Like so many super 80s shots. Like whenever I see a slow motion reveal of a new male character starting at the boots with a slow pan up, I know I'm falling squarely in the middle of the 80s. Like there's just so much of it, and I loved all of it.
Yeah, when you said that, it made me think of the character they introduced, the guy that comes and picks him up at the very first hotel. He's real redneck guy. He's got his wife in the car, and he's always spitting, like wiping his mouth, and just very, very gross person. Which I had heard that apparently I read this. Steve Martin apparently is a big germaphobe. And they couldn't get the reaction they wanted to out of Steve Martin. And so they told the guy to spit and then wipe his mouth and get the spit all over his mouth and then shake his hand. So apparently, I don't know if it's true. I couldn't find anything to confirm it, but apparently that's a legit reaction from Steve Martin of the guy spitting in his hand. It's the same guy that he's got a really good line in the film that says he's talking about his wife can help load up the trunk or whatever, and he says, "She's tough. Her first baby come out sideways. She didn't scream or nothing." Just that guy, same character.
Guy. Oh, so they did it right. They do the slow pan up on him, and the second they show his face, you're like, "Oh, I know where we're going with this character."
Yeah,
this character's entire archetype has already been decided.
Yeah, I think he also does those snorts and grunts in a little different way than Dell did, but still conjures up that whole, ugh, you're disgusting.
Yeah, I think he sounded more like Dip. It's like chewing tobacco, hawking kind of noises.
The yokel. Well, hey, we said we weren't going to do it, but if you were going to appraise this, like ballpark, where do you think this falls, within 5,000 or so, if you were going to just guess?
Oh, man. I mean, honestly, I think so gut feeling without like really, because like I didn't really pull it apart. I think gut feeling, I probably would say it doesn't get much on music.
Yes, I agree. I think that's one of its weakest, if not the weakest.
I would probably say it's not really bad anywhere else around I think longevity, it's got the Thanksgiving bonus, and that helps it some, but also it does feel aged. I don't know if like a kid today would find it particularly enjoyable. There's
probably some jokes that would work if you could get someone younger to sit through it enough to get to those jokes. You gotta earn them.
There are also a few jokes, and there's nothing like outstandingly bad or anything like maybe getting cut out of concern for cultural impact now. Nothing horrendously offensive though. I don't know. I think
just
maybe
standard 80s.
Yeah, like standard 80s kind of like low level acceptable racism and sexism kind of stuff that just doesn't fly now. Man, I don't know. I think this would probably come in like I'm going to say gut feeling in like the 50s or 60s, higher 50s or lower 60s. I don't think it would do tremendously well. I think music would really drag it down though.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. I'd say about mid 50s, just ballparking it. You're right. Music's gonna drag it down. It is definitely not the strongest. Besides some of the popular songs that we get in here, like "Back in Baby's Arms" or whatever. You're right. It's very 80s movie music, and they only use like 2 songs. Well, they use a lot of songs, but there are like 2 songs in particular that really stand out. There's one that's a super 80s synthy kind of song like you were talking about, but then there's another that's like a blues song. Like every time something bad happens, they play that blues harmonica, and you get a shot of Steve Martin's face and his reaction. That happens a lot. Yeah,
and every time there's a sentimental moment, they play that kind of like do 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 like synthy piano thing that I think is genuinely the same emotional synthy piano in like 2/3 of 80s comedies that have that have emotional moments. Like I don't think there's any difference at all. It's like totally generic.
They must have a website back in the 80s where they go steal that music, like now, where podcasters all go get their intro music from the same 3 or 4 websites, right?
Yeah, it was probably a guy, right? It was probably like I'll bet you before, like royalty free music and stuff like that, like we have now. You can just go pay like $10 and have a song for your podcast or whatever. I bet you there was like 2 or 3 guys in Hollywood that made a fortune off of just like generic tunes that people could just buy cheap and dump into stuff.
Yeah, and I wish I was that guy.
I bet you his career's dried up a little bit though now.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe a resurgence. Well, I guess the 80s resurgence is probably, if not on its way out, with the 90s resurgence full force. So
yeah, we're heading into it. Coming soon, baggy clothes and flannels for everybody.
Doc Martens, jeans that have the little cut up the bottom.
Listen, like my 90s experience was a rat tail and and like a shirt with a dirt track race car on it, and like a really good picture of me next to a cardboard cutout of RoboCop, right? So with a mullet.
I've seen that picture.
Yeah,
I have seen that picture. Yeah, the cutout of RoboCop.
Yeah,
I have seen that thing.
That has floated before. Yeah, I was like. Through most of the 90s, I was loving that children's department at Walmart.
Oh, man. 90s was I was in the full thick of my teenage rebellion. So especially when grunge started. So yeah, I go watch any Soundgarden video, and that's probably what I was dressed like. Well, man, we don't have a whole lot on this one. Like we said at the beginning, we kind of we came in hot here. Joe, anything else you want to wrap up with this particular film?
So I do actually have a thought, not necessarily just about this film, but this style of film. I think these are like perfect holiday films. Like this,
you
we
get
talked
it once
about
a year kind of thing.
Yeah, we talked about a few of them last year on the Christmas special. We'll probably talk about the same type of film on the Christmas special this year. And they're not like gonna win any major awards, but they're just easy to watch and lighthearted. I mean, everybody knows holiday seasons are full of, well, in a normal year, travel and stress and stuff. It's different stresses this year, but I think these like super lightweight films that you can just like leave on and pay attention in 5-minute bursts and find something to laugh at are like perfect for this time of year. And I'm glad they exist, and I like watching them a lot.
Yeah. And when you watch them and you only see them about once a year, once every couple of years, you pick up lines that you either completely forgot about that you love, or is very quotable, something that you're going to say back to somebody and they're not going to know what you said, unless they do know what you said, then you kind of share a moment. It's those kinds of films where you pick up a little thing here and there because you don't get to watch it that often. I would agree with that. I think that's a very fair statement. Our next episode, we're probably going to either go try to get in your films for Ready Player One, where we'll have on our host from the Basement Podcast, Albert and Will. We might be able to put out our Christmas special. We're getting to that point of the year where all of our specials bunch up here towards the end of the year. And we don't know exactly what films we will do for the Christmas special, Joe. We haven't talked about what we'd bring. I'm thinking of a couple that I might talk about that are a little atypical Christmas special or Christmas films. But yeah, we haven't really discussed what we might talk about.
It's going to depend on how long of a leash you give me, because I have thoughts. We've discussed my disdain for normal Christmas movies. I really only like a certain breed of Christmas movies. So
let's be honest. There's one Christmas movie in particular that we could just do the show on your favorite Christmas film.
We totally could. Yeah, we could do that. It could happen.
Do you think those who are listening would have any clue what your favorite Christmas film is?
I'm not going to give any hints here. If you're listening and you think you know what my favorite Christmas film is, and you could probably cheat because I'm sure I mentioned it last year.
You definitely mentioned it last year. You'd have to dig. It's in the middle of the episode, but you did mention it.
If you know what it is, like, hit us up on Discord or something. I'm curious to see if anybody remembers, because objectively it's trash, but I love it.
We ought to do some sort of giveaway with it being the Christmas season, and see if we can get somebody to hop on and guess what it is. Maybe we do some little giveaway. If somebody
listens to this and gets in touch with us and knows the answer, maybe there'll be something in it for you. Maybe it'll be a congratulations. Maybe it'll be better than that.
Yeah. Wow. Very generous of you.
Hey, it's the holiday season. I'm feeling very giving. Virtual pat on the back.
Wow. but a 6 foot away virtual pat. So let's talk about something that you've been doing lately, because I've really enjoyed it. I really, really, really do enjoy it. And it's not because you're the co-host with this show with me. I actually is something, the podcast that you have started is something I've had some interest in, but I was a little apprehensive, wouldn't say timid, but I didn't want to jump into it because it was a huge world. But the podcast that you've got going, Barrel House, man, you're doing a really good job with that. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the kindness. I mean, I'm happy with it. As this episode that you're listening to at this moment drops, there'll be a new episode of Barrel House on the Sunday that follows. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback on it, and I'm feeling really good about that. I've gotten some constructive criticism, and I'm gonna work that in as the show goes. It's been really fun. It's been kind of a learning thing because it's the first time I've ever like one mic done a show by myself and had to fill a half an hour or so of time just me talking.
Yeah.
And that's, man, time goes slow. Time goes real slow when you're doing it. But it's
funny. With two people, it goes by really fast.
Goes real fast, yeah. But I get more comfortable with it. Yeah, it's funny the amount of people who have reached out about from Barrel House who have never really tried or have very little experience with whiskey, who are just thinking about getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
Really shocks me how many people who aren't avid whiskey drinkers are listening to a whiskey podcast. That is a strange thing to me, but I'm really pumped about it. I think that's kind of fun. I think it'd be really great to have some listeners kind of start their journey and to go and be able to be there with them through their whole experience, you know? So if you're not a whiskey person yet, I could be a bad influence for you. So
and I'm raising my hand right now. You know what the one of my favorite parts of the podcast, it's almost become like Pavlov's dog, is when you pull the cork and it does the little boonk and does that sound. Yeah. Because it's the same sound you pull on any whiskey bottle that has a cork. It's that exact same sound. But when you have it there by your mic and it really amplifies, I'm always like, man, I'm going to have to go try what he's trying.
Yeah, I love that cork noise is one of my favorite noises. And I love when I get a new bottle that has a particularly tight cork or something, and it makes like a real solid thump when it comes out. Yeah. Like, it's just a very satisfying noise. I do try to include that on purpose because I know everybody loves that sound.
It is. It's a really good one. Well, definitely check out eargluemedia.com to get in touch with Joe or to subscribe to the Barrel House. You can also do that iTunes, everywhere that you can get a podcast. You can reach out to him, and all his social media is linked there at eargluemedia.com if you want to start subscribing to that. And then likewise, if you want to follow up with us, talk about films that you want us to appraise, give us some feedback, you can do so at Twitter. It's at FAppraisers. Instagram is at FilmAppraisers. Our email is filmappraisers@gmail.com. And again, the website is eargluemedia.com/TFA. Don't forget, eargluemedia.com/Discord, your own personal invite to our Discord server where you can come talk with all the hosts for all the shows of Earglue Media and a ton of our followers and listeners. It's a really great, safe, and fun place. I think you should check it out.
Yeah, and we have a lot of discussions about all kinds of films, not necessarily ones just we cover, but we're always in there talking about everything. What, people are talking about the movies they just saw or the trailers they just saw, and we're talking about how excited we are for things that are coming, if things ever start coming again. Right. Yeah, it's really great conversation in there. And while you're online, getting your Discord invite and joining the community. So in the last few months, we picked up a lot of new listeners. So we thank those of you who've been on there, spreading the word, maybe sharing our Instagram posts or telling your friends, whatever it is, joining the Discord and hanging out with us, all that. We appreciate spreading the word, helping the show grow, being part of the family. We appreciate that you think we're worth your time to listen to us. And for all of you who are new, we're welcome. Like, we're happy to have you. We're glad. We hope you like the show. Stick around. And we would really appreciate it if all of you, new and old, could jump on, rate, review the show if you have a few moments. If you don't, just being part of the show, listening to it is also great, but those rate and reviews do help a lot. And everybody join the Discord.
It's fun.
I don't know, maybe you're new. Maybe this is your first episode. Maybe you've been thinking about joining for a few episodes, but you're new to the show and you're afraid to jump in. The conversation is free flowing. always a place to jump in. Come say hi. Rate, review, Discord, anywhere. We're happy to see you.
Yeah, and a lot of people use Discord as just a news feed. Yeah, we have a ton of people on our Discord who, I guess traditionally what people call them creepers. I think it's a pretty rough name to call those people, but they do. They just hang out and they get a lot of things that we do on our network or with our shows or with this show in particular. We will typically go to Discord first and let those people know. And so if you want to use it as a news feed, by all means, come on and check it out. We'd love to have you. All right, Joe, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
The Film Appraisers was created by Josh McCrae, produced by Joe Kane and Josh McCrae, graphics by Albert Padilla, and voiceover by Morgan Marshall.
The thoughts, expressions, views, opinions, and the like are those of the guests and the host of the Film Appraisers and do not represent the opinions of any entity associated with the creation or distribution of the films discussed herein.